Welcome, everyone, to Spiritual Sanctuary. I'm your host, Bertina, and today we are going to talk about Mary Magdalene, the Rose Priestess, and the hidden path of divine union. As many of you all know, I am a Rose Priestess. I have studied many of the temple lessons of Mary Magdalene, but I'm always trying to learn more. So this week I decided, since Easter was coming up, I wanted to talk about the 13th disciple, the one that Jesus adored more than the others, and the ones that he graced with seeing him after the resurrection. So there are stories that history preserves, and there are stories that history reshapes. Then there's stories that are buried so deep beneath layers of fear and control and misunderstanding that they begin to feel like whispers rather than truths. The story of Mary Magdalene is one of those whispers, persistent, sacred, and quietly waiting to be remembered. For centuries, she's been introduced as a secondary figure, a follower, or worse, a woman defined by sin and redemption. Yet when we begin to look beyond the surface, beyond what was institutionalized and repeated, something entirely different emerges. What we find is not a woman on the margins, but a woman at the center, a spiritual leader, a healer, and a teacher whose presence carried the frequency of the divine feminine in its most embodied and powerful form. Now, to understand her fully, we must first be willing to step outside of the rigid structures that have framed her story and allow ourselves to enter a more expansive perspective, one that honors intuition and ancient wisdom and the deep knowing that truth is not always found in what has been officially recorded, but many times it's found in what has been intentionally left out. Now, Mary Magdalene did not walk beside Jesus Christ, often called Yeshua, as a passive observer of his teachings. She walked with him as an equal in spiritual understanding, and she embodied a complementary focus and force that brought balance to his presence. Where Yeshua represented the divine masculine, the energy of structure and direction and divine will, Mary Magdalene carried the essence of the divine feminine, which expresses itself through intuition, embodiment, depth, and the sacred wisdom of the heart. Now, their connection was not one of hierarchy, but of union. It reflected a sacred balance that has existed in the spiritual traditions across time. The understanding that creation itself emerges through the interplay of these two forces. The divine masculine provides the container while the divine feminine fills it with life. One is not superior to the other. Both are necessary and both are holy. Now, Mary Magdalene's path, however, did not begin within the framework of early Christianity. There are traditions that are often preserved within esoteric teachings and oral histories, and these suggest that she was trained within ancient mystery schools, particularly those devoted to Isis, the great Egyptian goddess of magic, healing, and resurrection. Now, Isis was revered as a master of transformation, a keeper of sacred knowledge, and a guide between worlds. Her temples were not merely places of worship, but centers of initiation where individuals were taught how to work with energy, how to work with consciousness, and how to work with the unseen forces that shape reality. Now, within these mystery schools, initiates were guided through processes that awaken their intuitive abilities and deepen their connection to the divine. They learned to understand the body not as something separate from the spirit, but as an instrument through which divine energy flows. They practiced healing through intention, through sound, and through presence. They studied the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and recognized that transformation is not an anomaly of energy, but a fundamental aspect of existence. When we view Mary Magdalene through this lens, her presence within the story of Yeshua takes on an entirely new dimension. She was not simply a witness to his work, she was someone who understood it at a profound level. She recognized the deeper meaning behind his teachings because she, too, had been initiated into the language of energy, symbolism, and spiritual transformation. This understanding becomes even more apparent when we consider the text known as the Gospel of Mary. Now, you may ask me, what is the Gospel of Mary? And it's a writing that was excluded from the canonical Bible, but has survived through fragments discovered centuries later. In this Gospel, Mary Magdalene is depicted not as a silent follower, but as a central figure who offers guidance and insight to the other disciples when they are overcome with fear and uncertainty following the death of Yeshua. It is Mary who speaks, reminding them that the truth they seek is not external, but internal. She teaches that the soul's journey is one of awakening and that fear is an illusion that obscures the deeper reality of divine connection. The exclusion of this text is not difficult to understand when we consider the implications of its message. This text presents a form of spirituality that is rooted in personal experience and inner knowing rather than external authority. It elevates the voice of a woman as a spiritual teacher and positions her as someone who possesses wisdom equal to, if not greater than, her male counterparts. In a system that was moving towards hierarchy and control, such ideas would have been seen as destabilizing. Yet, despite these omissions, fragments of Mary Magdalene's story has endured, often carried through symbolism and tradition. And one of the most compelling of these symbols is the story of the red egg, a story that's been associated with the origin of Easter traditions. According to the story, Mary Magdalene traveled to speak before the Roman emperor after the resurrection of Yeshua. Now, she came in holding an egg in her hand, and the egg always represented transformation, rebirth, and as she held out her hand with the egg, she proclaimed that he has risen. The emperor responded with disbelief, stating that such an event was impossible as the egg turning red. In that moment, the egg is said to have transformed its shell, taking on a deep crimson hue. Now, on the surface, this story may appear as a simple miracle, but its symbolism runs much deeper. The egg has long been associated with creation and fertility in the womb, the very essence of the divine feminine. It represents potential, the space from which life emerges, and the mastery of transformation. The color red, often linked to blood, vitality, and life force, further reinforces this connection. When the egg turns red, it becomes a powerful symbol of rebirth, not only in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense as well. In this way, the story of the red egg can be understood as a representation of the union between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Now, the resurrection of Yeshua reflects the transcendence of physical limitations, while the egg embodies the creative force that makes such transformation possible. Together, they illustrate a truth that has been echoed across spiritual traditions, that life is continually renewed through the interplay of these energies. Now, Mary Magdalene stands at the center of this symbolism. She is a bearer of its meaning. She carries the knowledge that transformation is not something that happens to us, but something that moves through us when we are aligned with our true nature. Her teachings, though often hidden or even fragmented, continue to resonate because they speak to a fundamental aspect of human experience. That human experience is the desire to remember who we are beyond the roles and identities that have been placed upon us. This remembrance is at the heart of what it means to walk the path of the divine feminine. It's not about rejecting structure or abandoning logic, but about restoring balance. It's about recognizing that intuition is as valid as intellect, and that feeling is as important as thinking, and that the body is not separate from the spirit, but an important part of it. Mary Magdalene is often associated with the lineage of the Rose Priestess. She embodies this integration. The rose, with its layered petals and delicate strength, serves as a powerful symbol of the unfolding of consciousness. It reminds us that growth is not linear, but it's cyclical, and that each layer of understanding reveals something deeper beneath it. The path of the priestess is not one of perfection, but of continual becoming, a journey of opening, softening, and expanding into greater awareness. In many ways, the story of Mary Magdalene is not just a historical narrative, but a mirror. It reflects the parts of ourselves that have been silenced or overlooked, the wisdom that we have been taught to doubt, and the power that we are only beginning to reclaim. Her life invites us to consider what it would mean to trust our inner knowing, to honor our intuitive gifts, and to step into a form of spirituality that is rooted in authenticity rather than expectation. As we sit with her story, we begin to see that it is not confined to the past. It is alive in the present, woven into the experiences of those who feel called to explore the deeper dimensions of existence. It is present in moments of healing, in acts of compassion, and in the quiet recognition that there is more to life than what can be seen on the surface. To remember Mary Magdalene is to remember the sacred balance that exists within each of us. It is to acknowledge that we are both structured and fluid. We are both grounded and expansive, and we are both human and divine. And in that remembrance, we begin to reconnect with the truth that has always been there, waiting patiently beneath the noise, a truth that tells us we are already whole. Now, if this resonates with you and you wish to begin the Priestess Path, please visit my website at bertina.org, bertena.org, and sign up for the Level 1 Priestess Path. It is just an introduction of some of the information about the Priestess, and it's free. We then have the Level 2 Goddess, that is a 52-week Goddess study that you can begin anytime. And from there, I will be building a Level 3 where you will learn the roles of the Priestess. And then we will go into Level 4 where you can choose Rose Priestess, Water Priestess, Forest Priestess, and so on. But if you would like to talk to me on Zoom or in person, you can visit me at our sponsors, Cosmic Connections in Nashville, Tennessee. yourcosmicconnections.com is their website, yourcosmicconnections.com. And you can book a discovery session, a Zoom with me, and we can talk about your interest. We can also talk and do energy work, private classes, or anything like that. And our sponsor would like to thank you. By listening to this podcast, you can go to their website, yourcosmicconnections.com, and purchase anything and get 10% off with the code Bertena, BERTENA, podcast 10. And you can order anywhere in the United States. And if you help comment and share and tag me in it, you will get into a drawing for a $10 gift card and some other prizes. I absolutely love these teaching about the priestess lineages. And I love talking about the different types. The Rose Priestess, the Isis Priestess or Temple Lineage, the Sacred Union, and the Magdalene Mystery Schools, just to name a few. There are so many. And I will be adding more and more as I go. But for now, go sign up for my newsletter at bertina.org. Scroll all the way down to the bottom, put in your first and last name and your email. And I will be sending you information about free Zoom classes, some free in-person classes, all kinds of different things. But for now, what I want you to remember is that we are all part of the divine feminine. We are both human and divine. And I hope that you decide to reconnect with your truth and walk with me on your new journey. I wish you good night and lots of love and healing.